Okay, welcome back to Demo 7, and we're going to continue with functions and formulas and do a little reviewing of math right now. What does it mean when we say we're trying to find the percent of something? Well, percent of something, percent, means in this case it's going to be your amount divided by the total amount. We're going to find out the percent of each student based on how many points they could have if they got them all right. Well, that would be 100%. So here, first off, we need is a total. We need a total down here in G13 of all possible points. So we'll go back up. Remember to use our sum, and it automatically grabs the 5 cells there of the possible points. Hit the return, and we have our total. So what is Betty's total? 170. What's the total scores? 195. So what would be her percent? 170 divided by 195. So we start out with the equal, but we're not going to use 170. We're going to use G6 divided by the total, G13. The enter key, and we get ourselves a decimal. Now, if I'm going to move that down, G13 can't change. So what does it mean when it can't change? Well, watch what happens here when we do move it down. We get an error, and the error is telling us something, and whenever you have an error, this little green triangle in the upper left hand corner will appear. If you click on it, you get a caution sign. Pull down the caution sign that says you're dividing by 0. You're dividing by 0. Now, wait a second, I was dividing by 195, which is in cell G13. But if you look as we move down, G13 changed to G14. Remember, when we make that move down, all of our numbers increase 1. So we move to the next cell, 15, 16. And notice in those cells, nothing's there. So they have a value of 0. So what do we have to do in this case? You have to do something very special. Remember, I referred to the cells as relative cell reference, G6, G13. Well, we need to make G13 so that it doesn't change. It stays G13 as we move each time in our copying. So what we have to do is create an absolute cell reference on the G13 cell. So I go up to my formula bar, put my cursor somewhere touching G13, and I do an apple T. What that does is add dollar signs. That's the symbol that distinguishes this cell from the relative cell. Absolute, dollar signs. Relative, like G6, no dollar signs. Hit the enter key, we get the same answer. But now when I copy this particular cell down, all the rest of the cells give me an answer. And as we look at each one, notice the G13 doesn't change. All right? Absolute cell reference. So when you have a cell, a single cell that needs to be used in multiple equations that are going to be copied down, that single cell needs to be put into absolute cell reference. So let's take this list here and change it to percents, and above we'll put in percent to identify them. Now I'm going to take each one of these grades, and I'm feeling generous, so I'm going to increase them by 8%. So up here in I3, I'm going to put in the number 8 followed by a percent sign. Excel is smart enough to know that that's 0.08, even though I just typed it as 8%, it knows that. And I want to increase each of these percentage values by 8%. So what does it mean to increase something by a percent? It's the present value, in this case H6, plus or minus, depending whether you want to increase or decrease. We're going to increase, so it's plus, again, the present value, H6, times whatever you want to use as a value for increase. In this case, it's 8%. So let's go down to I6 equal the present value, H6, plus the present value, H6 again, times I3, what I want to multiply that increase by. So I have a present value plus a little bit more, 8% more. Now it will do the multiplication before it does the adding. That's just the math. Multiplication, division come before adding and subtracting. If it wasn't the case, I'd have to use parentheses. So I hit the enter key and I get my answer in a very long percent. So that's significantly long. Let's reduce those decimal points a lot. And then we'll move the column over, remember, between the two columns there. Now, should I be able to copy this straight down and get answers for everyone else? And the answer is no. Why? Because the single number, 8%, that I'm going to use in every equation has to be in absolute cell reference. So Apple T, put it in cell reference, absolute cell reference. I get these railroad tracks. That just means that it's not wide enough to hold the answer. So I double click and see how wide it is. Oh, all those decimal points came back on me again. So I gotta get rid of them again. Slide the cell back over the column. Now I'm able to copy and paste all the way down by using my fill handle. And notice they stay in the decimal that they're supposed to be, and I created them in. So watch what happens here and say, okay, 8% was too generous, particularly for Fred here. Let's change the 8% to 4%. And notice by doing that, it's recalculated automatically.